Hello, everyone. Welcome to New Polities Podcast. Good money. I'm here with Jacob Imam, godfather of all things financial, and
your son, one of them.
That's right. That's more important. He's not a financial asset. He's a drain.
Total drain.
And we are doing our season with nothing but guests because we ran out of ideas. Sorry. We said what we had to say, and now we have to bring others. So here's James.
Hey, everybody. It's great to be here.
What are you saying about money?
James, we started the podcast, but James started saying some racially insensitive things.
Great to be. That's worse than what I said. So many podcasts I've been on now start with James was saying something racially insensitive.
Well, I think that you're exploring America, and you understand that it's a racially tense place.
Yes, there's a terseness here.
So you got to stop doing that.
Well, I mean...
Stop exploring.
Don't
notice these things.
I got questions about your financial system here. And the first is a semi-racial, because it's about illegal immigration.
Okay.
But this is a cash... This is compared to Europe, compared to, I think, even Africa, this is a very cash-heavy society. And any move to get rid of cash, when people go, we don't accept cash here, it's just FPOS. This is, they're accused of this being a racially charged thing where they're trying to get illegal dreamers out of there, which is a term I'm trying to coin. So, is that why this is such a cashy society? It seems like they want to allow for largesse in not participating in the regulated norms of financial
I think yes
activity.
and no. I think that's certainly a reason, but when you go to Hi-Hat, the bar down the street, and they only ask for cash.
Yes, I don't see a lot of Hispanics.
Yeah, that's not what's going on there. I mean, it's just a lot. It's a lot. It's like 2% on a transaction for your debit card, and that's the low end.
Okay.
So you're losing money.
They're charging me extra money when I'm using my card.
They don't charge you extra money, but often you'll see minimums. So if you go to M&M Hardware up the street, they have a nice A4 sheet of paper that says, please use cash. Cards hurt our business.
Yeah. Oh, everybody.
And then they
has that
also
line.
have a minimum if you're going to spend like $5. And I actually don't understand this. Maybe you could help me with the math here, because they'll have a minimum where they say like if you spend this much, we have to add a charge if you're going to use a credit card.
Surely the percentage that's being taken.
Well, that's what I want to know. Isn't the percentage always the same? Why do they do that?
I don't know.
It's a mystery.
Yeah, but that's not how it is for us here. I mean, like when we sell magazines and or like the timber frame stuff, we haven't run into that. It is flat. Yeah, flat rate.
But this is rent seeking, right? Like the actual expense to Visa and MasterCard of providing that service is like nothing.
Yeah,
there's not
not now.
I
mean, maybe it was a bit to have the initial capital, but now they're just taking money on every single transaction, and we're buying the convenience, I think, of not having cash.
Yeah, no, it certainly is a convenience, and it does all your accounting there too. I mean, you don't need, if you're actually one of these people that cares about receipts, you don't need to have a receipt anymore because it's all right there on your, unless it obviously doesn't break down items or anything like that. But
you can also evade paying taxes by operating in cash,
which is a big reason why people do it around here.
Yes. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
So, all of which is to say, of course, it is a better. It's better for someone that can't easily get Social Security numbers, bank accounts. I think that's true, but incidental in some ways.
Well, I mean, you just think about it. Like whenever you have a third party come into a scenario, then you're more dependent and less profitable.
Sure.
Right? I mean, that's like across the board. Whether that's like our iPhones, the internet as a whole or whatever.
Yeah.
It's just like you can't do something yourself, or you have to pay somebody to do that thing.
But also, you can have it be two parties again by removing the cashier and turning them into a robot that just takes your card.
That's true.
That's not two party.
That is true. It's you and the company who's contracting the machine.
But
exactly.
But there's a contract with the company and the machine. It's just the parties are represented by robots.
I mean, these factors would be in place for every major Western country. Every country in the world would have these same reasons to keep out the card, but only America seems to actually successfully have a norm.
I would suggest that there's
an
aesthetic happening here too that might not be present. Our money rocks. It feels great. It's green.
This is you outing as a Freemason?
It's all green.
You love having a little pyramid with an eye on top of it?
Look, the whole idea of the global American empire is that the dollar sets the standard for everyone else. Now you're going to say we don't actually have dollars, and we've lost the whole aesthetic of empire.
You need to see the money for it to mean something.
Yeah. I mean, like, what's on your money?
Well, David Unapon, who was a great inventor, an Aboriginal man, he invented a way to shear sheep, and then he decided that all other inventions were pointless, so he went off to a shed to try and master perpetual motion for the rest of his life.
Wow.
Didn't do it, but he thought that was the only thing worth trying.
Wow.
So he's on the money.
That's cool.
Yeah, I'm convicted in the same way. It really is the only thing worth trying. So, but enough of that. I think there is also kind of like the American rebellion. Like,
Okay.
Like we are contrarian. We're a contrarian country.
And we
just
express
don't go
this by using our government-issued money.
which is really captures the heart of America. I think.
I think that's right.
Without
Yeah.
being ironic. Like
Yeah.
I don't think there's a
No, there's not really a contradiction.
There is a performative contradiction, but I really think that actually fits us.
Yeah.
Like who we are. It's like we try and be different. We try and go off, and actually it just ends up being into a different form of conformity.
I can go to a Walmart right now and buy a shirt that has a $100 bill on it as its main aesthetic
Yes.
thing, and I just don't see anyone doing that with a euro. You know,
No, they don't have. That's true. I don't think there is another currency that's as hip. No, the Queen, the pound. You could probably
pound.
find on something.
But actually, that's
Yeah.
a representative of a real point of unity. So,
Yeah.
like, of course, in Britain, you have all these different political factions, but at least you have what they call some people call a non-political point of political union, which is
Look,
the
you don't
royal
have to try
family.
and sell the monarchy to me. I
Yeah,
can't
yeah.
wait until this country breaks up into about 6 or 7 different monarchies.
What I'm trying to
it
say
will
is,
be. Yeah. People ask me if someone asked me, will America ever have a king? And I told them no, but it'll have a lot of kings, and we probably won't call them kings. We'll call them like warlords or something. But
Super president.
We'll call them owners. Yeah.
Anyway, sorry, that's the
But this
point.
thing about cash being propaganda.
No, but this is
Go.
my point. It's like we don't have that kind of non-political form
Yeah.
of political unity,
Yeah.
except for the dollar. Like commerce is the thing that binds us together in a perpetual
Yes.
motion of disunity.
I would say
that
you
keeps us
also
in the
have
same
like, I mean, you
market
worship
system.
the void in that you love not having that person. There is like a residual, we don't have a tyrant.
Yes.
Pride, like a Roman Republic style, for not having a king. We should all be bound together. I was talking to Americans in Texas, and they couldn't believe that I was
Those are
pro
the real
monarchy.
Americans, by the way.
They're the only real Americans protecting our border.
It's West Virginia.
But none of them vote. None of them vote. They all love not having a monarch, but none of them will participate in representative democracy.
No. Let's take a moment to
Yeah.
realize this. No, it's true. Texans are not as American as West Virginians are. I think that's true. All right, continue. Your point. Yeah.
I agree. There's a future in which Texas is not American, and I don't think there's a future in which West Virginia is not American.
There is a future in which America is West Virginia.
It's your dream. It's your personal ambition.
No, it just seems like that's the way the economy is going.
You know,
Sorry.
your economy is so strong. There's so much money. You have so far to go financially and with inflation before you hit a revolutionary situation.
Oh,
Like-
but we cause everybody else's revolutionary situation.
Yeah, I mean, I wish you would stop that. But
Well, I read this paper. I mean, this is years ago. I'm reaching way back, but I think in kind of the tracking hyperinflation in the modern era, there's like 57 occurrences.
Yes, something,
and that 56 of them came after the creation of the Federal Reserve. So
Right.
once America started to manipulate its currency
Yes.
significantly, and then becomes, a few decades later, the global standard, then at that point, we are not susceptible to we're only susceptible to one monetary manipulation, like from ourselves, but there's a ripple effect all throughout other nations as that trickles down, and hence why there's 56 of those occurrences happening afterwards.
also, you can't. It's very hard. It's taxing to hyperinflate a metal. When are we off? When are you on the dollar bill? The
You use a
Civil
different
War,
word other than
1860s.
taxing.
Yeah, it's a good point. Unnecessary. The system of printing another piece of paper is more readily done than taking a gold coin and making it less gold for the same rough size.
Yeah,
Do you
people
know?
have been trying to do that for a
If you were
long
trying to
time.
hyperinflate that would be really.
Very impressive.
I won't say taxing, but you would be exhausted at the end of it. Now, I want to. The first thing I did want to ask, I've made a list, but my phone's over there. so
I
I'm not
got
gonna
3
remember.
more things to say about cash.
Oh, no, I don't need. All right,
I was
just
born
cash
with
flow.
this.
Yeah.
It's harder to give someone your debit card or credit card in a trusting and amicable way.
Here, show him what that means. Like, give him.
No.
I've received
Because you give them the card, then you got to give them your PIN,
Yes.
and then you got to ask them for a receipt. They go buy cigarettes at Speedway or whatever, and you're like, just buy that, please. Right? Whereas with cash, it allows you to not have that concern. You want $5, you want $20. I can demarcate it. So I think one of the things is cash actually makes it friendlier.
Yeah. Certainly for street homelessness.
For street homelessness,
It's
exactly.
very easy to hand cash, whereas in Australia, increasingly people have little squares that you can tap and pay the homeless.
You're right.
Which is...
What?
And they have
Really?
phones.
Yeah.
Come on, like no. The homeless walk around.
The
with
homeless,
those
or like
squares.
there was one guy in Melbourne who had his like, please help me, and then on the other side was his like bank account details. So you could transfer.
yeah. I mean, it makes sense. Like I don't.
The worst one is I don't have any cash on me, and then they go, "I'll come with you to an ATM."
Yeah,
Oh, that
and
happens all
that
the time.
quickly feels like a mugging.
that is a mugging because then you're like, then it is mugging, but it is very similar to the debit card experience, right? Which is like, I have on me, and my wife has to do this because she'll like it's important to work with cash for me because if I just work with a debit card, then what I have is a infinite reserve. It's not infinite. It's extremely finite, but as card, it doesn't say how much it is, and so it feels infinite. And so if someone needs something or if I want to get something, it's just there's no evaluation happening. But if you have $20, you got $20.
I wonder if another part of it. So like Dave Ramsey, our Protestant doppelganger, he has the recommendation that
He's
you
our
budget-
doppelganger. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's that way. He recommends like envelopes, like budgeting with envelopes. So it's like this is for food, and you put how much money you're budgeting for.
At the grocery store that I work
Yeah.
at, there's a lady that comes in with an envelope marked groceries.
Nice.
And it's awesome. She puts it there, and and the thing is, she's a wonderful customer as a result. She always buys a lot.
She's got a big grocery budget. She's not
Got a
trying
big
to
grocery,
skimp.
no, she's
Are
great.
you open today?
Yes,
Great. I got to buy milk.
you got it, man.
I bought Speedway milk yesterday.
Oh,
It was actually all right.
I mean, milk.
I dropped it on the way out of the store and it stayed intact. I didn't know that's what the indentation was for in the side of it, so that when you drop it and it fizzes up and expands,
Oh wow.
it just fills up that bubble.
Oh, I didn't know that
The
either.
Stella Artois that I bought did explode, and I
You
had
gotta
to
stop dropping things.
suck the. I bought them the same. It was
Oh,
I
it's the same event. I'm sorry. I thought it was two events.
I had to shotgun the Stella Artois.
you got
outside the
down on all
Speedway.
fours and sucked it off from the concrete. Yeah.
Yes, I see what you've done there, and not in some time have I
Oh
done that.
no! I see. I didn't even see what I did there.
Now let me on the sex act and on dating.
Oh man, we're gonna cut that. We have to cut that.
Leave
out.
it in.
I'm embarrassed.
Leave it in.
He does this all the time, to be clear.
With a sort of a traditionalist Catholic
pure.
type people.
He's pure.
Listen, it's about to get dirty again. With traditionalist
Oh, boy.
Catholic type people, the conversation I have over and over again, no matter where I go, is someone finds it funny to bring up the marriage debt. And I wanted to discuss
Oh,
that
that's a good money topic.
It is a
with
good one.
money.
Okay, let's go for it.
This is bringing my two podcasts together.
Yes.
All right.
I'm a thoughtful guest.
Marriage.
So, I mean, maybe one of you could talk about what the marriage debt.
Why are you making
When
us
people
say
say-
it? You brought it up.
Well, there's the sense that young men will talk about the marriage debt, and what they mean by that is once they're married, they
Yeah.
will be able to demand sex from their wife, and their wife will be able to demand sex from them, and they'll be all sex all the time.
Good luck.
And this is actually good.
Because they're constantly demanding from
Yes.
one another. Yeah.
Well, you're calling in the debt. So this is a
Yeah.
thing owed to you, which doesn't make much sense of a Josephified marriage, but there we have it.
Ooh,
I mean,
what do you want to know?
well, this was what because I never really. I mean, it's like yes, you should have. If a spouse has a sexual desire, you know, unless there is a good cause, you should have. I mean, you shouldn't withhold sex to hurt somebody in your marriage, right?
Sure. Okay.
I think. I mean, I don't want to oversimplify, but certainly I know of many, you know, marriages, secular whatever marriages, where sex is used as a weapon in the relationship.
Sure.
So I think the marriage debt is meant to be another way of looking at it, like, oh, this is a thing that we should owe to each other and give to each other.
Yeah.
But when it's described by like a young, horny man, it
Yeah.
sounds really ugly.
Yeah. Totally.
I mean, we just go back to the thing that we always talk about is like the law. Like, what's the law for? You know, and
Yeah.
debt is certainly an aspect of law. It's a form of justice that is about commercial interactions, right? I mean, you have this commutative type of justice that's talked about, where it doesn't focus so much on the person's transacting, but the products being transacted. Law is a form of this. Money is a form of commutative justice. That is inherently an aspect
financial
of the act.
Of commerce. But we also have, we would say, as a figure of speech, we would say debt of gratitude. We would say, I mean, there are ways in which we have obligations.
Let's keep it literal, for a moment, and so when we were talking about demands of justice that are commutative, then some of that is like really helpful, right?
Yes.
I mean, like we actually need to have some of these laws, and we need to have, some real demands of justice in commerce, so that you actually get what you're owed.
Yeah.
Some form of justice is received. But of course, law is supposed to move all the way into grace. And so I think at best, considering the marriage debt is like, that's just a starting base, and that's not the fullness of virtue.
Can I add something?
I like that.
And I'll add one other thing is that at best there is the same difficulty.
You're getting me excited. I'm taking off my clothes.
I owe you nothing.
Debt. I owe you.
We're getting a gay blessing live on the air.
Touch them. Yeah. That there is that same kind of like wooing that happens in dating. It's like that's the pinnacle of marriage still.
Yes.
Like that's happening every time, where it's like it's a true falling in love with one another, and not hey, you still owe me 93 cents on the dollar.
Yeah, I was going to say the paradox of it is that even though, as Paul says, like our bodies are not our own, but they belong to each other in marriage, at the same time, this doesn't change the proper nature of the sexual act, which is for the sake of the unity of the spouses and the procreation of children. And there's a certain primacy, Paul VI, I think, talks about, of the unity of the spouses, because it's, happens every time, and procreation maybe happens. But that unity of the spouses as the norm of sexual relation means that if you're going to call in a debt, you can only call in an act that is
beautiful. That's
the unity of the spouses, right? So it's not like you can say, and this is what every
you are going to have a fulsome unity of experience.
Yeah, it just doesn't work. It doesn't make sense.
Come close to me as a person.
It's like yes, it's a debt, but what is the thing owed? Like the expression of married love, the renewal of a sacrament. Like that's what's owed. And so you could never, and I agree. Like I hear this all the time, where it's like, you just like call in the debt. It's just the worst. I mean, it's just hilarious, because I think it's only something that you can imagine doing before you're married. But then the moment, like in that kind of like horny trad mode thing, like the moment you're married, you're like, well, this is my friend.
Yes.
So like to ask of a debt for your to payment of a debt from your friend,
so bizarre.
Was
what I thought would be the out, which was, I mean, how would you like a Christian debt collector to act?
I just think it would
breaking people's legs, or is it treating them with respect? But that thing about what the debt is calling in, is the unitive.
Right.
And
so what I mean to say is, I don't think it could ever relate to your immediate desire.
Yeah.
Because it would be precisely what is owed is the fullness of the unity of the marriage sacrament. Therefore, there might be a long conversation and a lot of time between you thinking that there's a debt owed, and then getting to the actual point where it can be paid.
But
that's all I'm going to say about that.
You do owe your spouse that conversation.
You owe the whole thing.
And to be there.
But you know what?
That's
present
right.
Paying the debt might take a month. You know what I'm saying? Like like when
if you're naturally family planning, that is that can be true.
And if you but the thing about Catholic sexual morality is you can't split it up into payments. Moving on.
That's a great, it's a good humane vitae dig. You can't take the entire marriage as one thing. Well, it's been great being here on the Good Money Podcast. I think I had other stuff I wanted to ask about.
I can't tell if I'm blushing or if it's just warm.
That was great.
Here.
No, it is. It's very warm.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
How long have we been going for?
We've been doing great. So,
all right.
20 minutes.
Money. You had some money questions. Debt,
yes, well, I want to ask about the stock market.
Okay,
because I've read
please.
through your work on the stock market as a new poly, and I think there are questions as to what, with the owning of stocks, what is permissible and what is not.
Yeah.
Because there is a way to read that, which is to say that any publicly traded stock you basically shouldn't have. Mm-hmm. And is this your position?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm fascinated. So you also believe though in worker controlled companies to some extent. Like if you're working for a company, it's good to have a share in that company.
That's correct.
So if you are working for a company and you're using that money to buy stocks in the company, is that an appropriate thing to do?
Well, it does have a lot to do with whether or not that company's public or private.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
So if it's private, then actually I could see a really robust model being developed in which those who are coming into the company
Yeah.
are slowly acquiring a greater and greater percentage of it, and that helps pay for the retirement
Yes.
of older employees and their divestiture.
But in a public
Is
company,
that
say you work for a public company, and one of the things is you get a certain amount of stock in the company. Should you divest yourself of the stock in that company?
Oh, I would, yeah. Absolutely.
I did not know it was so radical a position. I love this.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So you're 100% no.
was clear.
No. Well, it was
Because
when you describe the evils of, because a lot of it is of the work that you've got online about not owning stocks is the motivation of the people having the stocks. It's, making a quick buck or trying to be
which more
clever
easily
in
applies
selling
to
and
like
trading.
day trading,
Which is, I think, so day trading is obviously out. But in terms of possessing a stock that maybe some of the company is publicly traded,
I think
fascinated
it's
by
very
this.
tragic and difficult because I think that often what happens when public companies offer this is they are kind of webbing people into the stock market, and I'm learning more and more about this. I mean, the stock market is the chief, I think, tool for the creation of income inequality between workers and capital.
So we're developing our new critique. It's not just moral; it's structural.
Okay.
So, but there's a structural thing, right? Like when
It's always nice when theory blossoms and
it's there. We continue to think, but I've been learning. This is something everyone knew, and I feel like I'm just catching up. Like the way that income equality is really created is that C-suite rich people are paid in largely financial assets and stocks, and then workers are largely paid with a wage, and then there's a little stock option that's very minor sometimes. And it seems like the sort of structural difficulty is that the worker can't do with his stocks and with the stock market what the very wealthy can do.
So the thought that you're getting any control of the company, any purchase in it, and any way to contribute is an illusion.
I think so.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, but at the same time, I don't presume ill will in a total sense. Like I think people are just trying to play the system that they've been given, and are trying to treat their workers well, but can't actually conceptualize just giving them more money.
Yeah.
And this often happens with like benefits, with 401ks, with just financial assets generally, is that it's sort of preached as a way of lower and middle class people to have a little bit of what the C-suite has. But what it actually does is it creates, I mean, it seems to me that it creates, oh, don't call me now. I'm just working out this thought.
You're actually getting bought into their system.
Yeah.
And the disparity there is even greater.
Because they're really good at winning that system. And this is just the stock market in general. Like we all buy stocks, say, and we get an average of 10% return on what we put in there. So we're feeling good. We're making more money rather than less. Everyone's happy, right? Wrong. Because the C-suite folks.
I don't know what C-suite means.
Sorry, like CEOs, CFOs, the people.
That's great. I'm with you now.
The people, they keep on coming out with reports like the rich own 60%. Now they own 75% of the total world's wealth. Now they own 80%. It's just this, this increasing class of people that are the super rich. So it's sort of beyond thought almost. This class of people can basically have the power because they have the money to make huge gains on the stock market that are not commensurate with the 10% average return that people are given. This little bite into it are given. So, for instance, I was just reading about this guy who made $2 billion in like a couple months because he had a lot of money and was able to be on the board of directors of Apple, and he could talk to Tim Cook. Now you might have a little middling stock option in Apple or whatever, but you can't talk to Tim Cook, the CEO of Apple, but he could. So he's tweeting at Tim Cook and saying, "Hey, we really need Apple's undervalued. We need to up that stock price, and we're going to do what's called a stock buyback," which I'm still learning the mechanisms of, but I can say the word with some confidence. Yeah. And Tim Cook's thinking about it. He says, "Yeah, let's do it." So now your boy.
This isn't really happening over Twitter, I promise.
I'm sure there's more, yeah. The point is that like these people know each other. They're very rich. They know each other and they work together. And that is the personal power and friendship that they've got at this level that you kind of imagine you have some sort of access to, but you actually don't on this lower level of middling stock options and day trading. So then the buyback happens, and this guy comes out with $2 billion, and now they have more. That guy has more actual power. So you might have gained 10% on your income, and he just bought all the land because he got $2 billion that you were hoping to buy, and now you can't afford it, even though you got your 10% increase.
Yeah, I think that's really the key is that within the market, you do find owners' compensation outpacing labor compensation because of the mechanisms of options. Yep. And that is what we like to call the great bait and switch, where they take these virtual assets, which we are all clamoring after, and then turning around and buying the things that we actually all want, and thus raising up the price. So like, an example I like to give is that one of our city fathers, a guy named Dorman Sinclair, he ran Union Bank, which is just on the other side of our street right here, same block. And he was bemoaning to his daughter one day that it's only fools and the very incompetent who ever get a mortgage. And a mortgage to buy a house, right? Yeah. So a mortgage during his time was 5% for 5 years. That's what he was doing, right? That sounds like a pretty darn good deal now. And it's like, no one can get that today. I mean, it's just not really possible for the vast majority of the population. So then
if you could pay off a house in 5 years, that would, I mean, it's not a mortgage. You're going to live past that debt.
So what we have to ask is like, what structurally speaking changed? And one of the major considerations that we have to have in this is like, well, who started to buy up all the houses that drove up the prices so much? What happened to labor compensation? Because there was tons of employees back then. I mean, sure, I think there's actually more. I actually don't know. I'm not going to say this, but the number of small businesses is not. Well,
I would
so
also.
Outlandish.
I think regulation is a big part of. In my country, at least, regulation is, I think, the big reason that house pricing exploded, because you can't.
Well, why did regulation surge?
Oh, it was because people by that point had enough money to secure political power such that they could have zoning laws and not free up land, and then make it very hard to just go out with a couple of hombres and an axe and build a house on that land.
That's part of the bait and switch. Yeah, is my point. It's like once you ascend to that level of monetary power, then you've also ascended to that level of political power. So it's not just as simple as I'm taking my money and I'm going to go buy a bunch of houses now. Yeah. And so no, I'm going to get involved and make sure that nobody else is going to be able to purchase the houses that I'm going to.
So when people tell me that everything's getting better all the time, and they show me a graph that shows like average income, and it's like the income kind of does this, it doesn't matter. And it took me forever to realize that, because I mean, part of it's living in the Rust Belt, where it's like, seems to me like this is a very bad situation. We have poverty, no one can afford the things they want, and they're living paycheck to paycheck, if that. And then they show me the graph though that says, nope, they're all getting more money all the time. And it's I don't deny it. The graph is the graph. Who am I?
And then they compare it to the Sears catalogs from the 1980s to now, and they're like, look, dishwashers are a comparable price today as it was then. Yeah. And they do stuff like that.
Yeah.
But what I'm realizing it misses is that it doesn't explain the situation in which, yes, your income increased, but then everything you want is more expensive because it's all owned by people who are getting massively disproportionate increases on their income precisely because you're playing the stock. Well, we're all playing the stock market.
Well, I just on that cost of living. Just one. Yeah. I saw this on Twitter yesterday is that apparently a chicken burger in this country not that long ago was $1, and it's now like $3.99. But the wage to make that chicken burger has remained the same.
I see.
And this is true of Taco Bell. People are going through a lot of different fast food items and how which is the real food that poor people get a hold of. Now, I want to talk about a solution to this problem. I was down at the Carnegie Library, this beautiful monopolist-built library in the downtown of Steubenville.
Yeah.
I'm increasingly sure that the modern corporation, this need to, why when you know about one business, do you want to sell some of it off and own a bunch of other businesses as well? It's because legally you have to. You can't have a monopoly. And so the same people own 25% of a bunch of companies, a bunch of different fields. Is the answer to this to end the monopoly laws and just let people who are good at their business have huge amounts of money concentrated in their person that they can then spend at their largesse?
Well, fair enough to ask the question, but I really do think we got to reconsider like what the CDF has said about structures and policies. That structures are not so much the causes of our actions as they are the effects of human action. That's right. It's like the Catholic Church still knows a thing or two. It's amazing, and that's really important. It's like it wasn't just like some alien force that put monopoly laws on us. Like we created them.
People were sick of them
for a reason.
So then,
I think what you're saying is that there aren't men of largesse.
That's right. Yeah.
And you wouldn't get
more difficult for them to free up. I mean, Elon Musk's money exists in his stock price. It doesn't exist in having huge amounts of profit. I'm sure he has that too.
No, I see what you're saying.
But in terms of his actual ability to just go, I'd like to build a hospital here. I mean, this is something that is done. But charity works on a whim very often, and that's robbed from these people.
Yeah, that's very true. But I think Carnegie is a good example where he felt an immense guilt for the amount that he had. And he even developed, you heard the Gospel of Wealth. That's him, I think. Yeah, it's him. And
I know nothing about Carnegie except that his library is great.
Yeah. But the reason...
Come to Steubenville, see the library.
The reason...
Chandeliers in a library in the downtown.
Yeah, it's beautiful. And there's a lot of that in small-town America, and it's because Carnegie could still feel the call of the gospel. I mean, even if you can look at it like, he just totally... ripped up the gospel and rearranged it to make it justify his own work or his own accumulation, sure, but he also felt the need to do that. Yeah. Like he felt the need to make a gospel of wealth and not just a spreadsheet of wealth. And it seems to me like that's what's missing. Like I don't think that you could simply give people massive amounts of money in concentrated portions and expect them to respond to the things we say. And the reason I know this is because I keep saying that rich people should do great things with their money instead of just having it. And they keep on not doing it. And I know it's not the popularity of this podcast because we are solidly within the 1,000 to 2,000 view range, which is, while not the best quantity, the highest quality of YouTube.
Only the finest people watching. Well, when the fact that they all started trying to get into the space race at the same time does make me think that there is a capacity there for these multi-billionaires too. Well, it's like, it could have. It's weird that they all did it at the same time. They just all had an idea fixe. I don't know how to say that.
But I think the space race versus library building is a really good distinction between the motivations of a still somewhat Christian wealthy class and then a
tech pagan.
Yeah. I just think it's done. It's like you don't say who do I turn to serve the poor. You say what frontiers are left that I can possibly be a victor of. I think in fact.
How can I get as far away as possible from the natural duties and responsibilities that being a human entails? Well, I will leave the place that God set us to be.
Well, and then when what's the bald one? Who's the baldy?
Bezos.
Jacob. Yeah, when Bezos was trying to synthesize them, and no disrespect, but he said, I can't. It's like, have you seen that video where he gets back with William Shatner, and William Shatner's like crying, and it's changed his. It was like, I never knew it would feel like that. And Bezos is going, we've got to get up there and start polluting space to stop climate change here. We've got to move our pollution into space. Like that's his immediate gut reaction to being in space is, wouldn't it be good to get the pollution up here?
He's a genius.
Yes, he's a real... Look, if Jeff Bezos wants to help, that would be great. But and I think he should.
Well, I mean, I don't mean to be dour and down. I mean, I hope that Christians in that world who have that same kind of influence over C-suite people that institutional investors do can teach them about Christ and give them some sense of the necessity by which having money demands you make a transformation of that abstract evaluation into a real service to the common good. I mean, that's what people need to feel. They need to feel the need to make a transformation. And I don't know.
Well, I assume that's why the board system is there, so that you can immediately remove anyone who starts to have these notions.
Oh, yeah, that's why it came about, 100%.
We watched Iron Man for a friend's birthday party.
It is a great movie. I'm sorry I missed it.
Yeah,
I learned.
Where were you?
That's a great. I was doing the Crunch podcast.
Yeah.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah,
Okay.
shout out the Crunch podcast. They're coming to town soon to do a comedy show.
That's awesome.
I think.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Okay.
But it was great because I'd watched that in like 2008 and I didn't know. Now I watch it again and I just feel like I'm really getting to the depths of the meaning of the film.
What's your theoretical take on Iron Man?
Well, it's a movie about batteries.
Yeah.
The main question is...
You never thought the Energizer Bunny could be so cool.
It's just about charge. Who's got the charge? Who doesn't have the charge? Who has the plug to get the charge back in time? That's what it's all about. It's just you're watching batteries. You're watching them go up and down.
But then also his spirit is like the great infinite battery. Like Tony Stark there's no shortage he has no shortage of ideas or sexual power or whatever. Like he is just like pure. What was that? Id? I don't know what the term, but like that's the infinite that's not being, and then it's how he manifests that in.
Yeah, it's unfortunate
the world.
Such an unfortunate thing.
That was really weird. How deep that was, that reflection.
No, but do you know what I mean? Like he struggles.
a batter.
He struggles with his body. Like he is not a batter.
Yeah.
Tony Stark's mind the whole time, and the fact that he's the only character in the end. And I don't like any of the Avengers stuff, but of course he's the only one who can die in a Christ-like way at the end of the Avengers movies, because he's the only one who is, in a sense, unlimited, for whom his sacrifice would be meaningful in some way. Because if Tony Stark continued surviving, you sense that there'd be another way to get one of the other people back. You have to have the god of the series die. It's the only way to bring pathos to it.
I think that's right. Although it is a shame that because Hollywood doesn't understand virtue, you have to suspend such a degree of disbelief because he has this journey. I haven't seen anything besides Iron Man, but I've heard of this journey that you explained. But he doesn't actually become like a good person. Like the movie's set up to be basically Christmas Carol for people who like beeping and booping.
And then it pivots and he reinforces his will to a greater extent at the end. And that's you get to force your personality on the world, and if you're strong enough, they'll have to listen to you. You don't have to change.
Yeah. It does.
Isn't that? I mean, it's a refreshing. It's different. There weren't a lot of movies doing that before Iron Man. I think that's why.
What I realize is that Tony Stark in that movie is he's an owner of a company, and he's not very involved or able to deal with his stock price and the board of directors. I mean, the fundamental crisis comes in when they decide to stop making weapons, and then the stock price goes down. And the guy who's Ironmonger, he is on the board, and he recommends basically that Tony be like declared incompetent.
Yeah.
And I didn't know about any of this stuff when I watched it. I was just like, this is just dialogue. And it is. It's dumb dialogue. But it's just great because it's a movie about having to kill an owner. Like the bad guy is the one who siphons off value into the stock market, and that's his concern. And what he has to kill is he says it like the goose that lays the golden egg.
Steve Jobs. It's a movie about getting rid of Steve Jobs.
Yeah, and it just seems to be like, I know we can take that as, maybe that seems trite, like these are the woes of the 1% or whatever. But it does seem like it plays out in the life of any nation, especially America, that has the stock market as its sort of part of its beating heart, I guess, which is that ownership always becomes functionally related to value, like the abstract value that it can produce, and it's always in a kind of conflict where you want to do real things, you want to have real power, you want to do good, even, but there's an alternative abstract system that wants only the value that those things can produce.
But this is why that is not just a 1% story, but why it is compelling, is because you want the great man to have the power to do the thing that God put him here to do. You want, Steve Jobs, for all the problems of that company and for all the terrible things that have come from all of the inventions, he was having ideas, right? And he was doing new things. And you look at the post-Steve Jobs version of that company, and it's other than the computer that we're going to glue to our faces, it's been like 15 years without an idea. And the stock price has exploded dramatically, but it's like, we'll do it in green. There'll be a pregnant man emoji. The screen's going to get a little bit bigger. The thing that prevents capitalism resulting in a revolution, I think, which is this novelty perpetually of like a cool new thing, does stop when the stock people get involved and just extract value. Absolutely. And suddenly you go, if they killed everyone at Apple, not that they should, but if the people of whatever, Silicon Valley, if the peasants and the homeless and they rose up with their machetes and whatever, and they butchered everyone at Apple, what like intellectual... Like why would we cry out and say, no, they have to keep doing their important work? Yeah. There's no sense of potentiality to look forward to in it. And so when Tony is removed, it's like, he just made a big fighting suit that's going to prevent drone bombing on Pakistan, where he can just go and punch a terrorist to death, and the wedding can continue around him. I mean, this is a cool thing, but the stock people want to get in the way. There's something.
No, I think you're right. Yeah, you're right. It is a universal story, or at least for us in this current time. Yeah, I mean...
there's more on Iron Man. Look, who's the big DC alternate to Iron Man, which is Batman.
Oh, of course.
In terms of like the flagship show.
Same situation.
Yes, in that he owns the company.
Owner.
But he doesn't want anything. Company. I mean, he just takes the money from the company and does his own thing. He's not trying to monetize it all. He's not trying to run the company properly. And he's not like a bad owner. He's a disassociated owner. He's falling asleep in his meetings so that he can fight street gangs. But that's the... People, I mean, Nolan's Batman movies are accused of being fascist often because it's like about the strong, great man who uses violence to rectify society. And there is no real sense in which Tony Stark he's just so not a fascist. He's just a capitalist American guy. There is no undertone of...
Yeah, but you do see just like the despicability of the stock market people, because it's just a parasitic relationship on real value.
Yeah, you're holding this guy down. Yeah.
Yeah, and quite literally.
Like he didn't like need the money from them. Anyways, like he was building bombs and he got his money from his bombs, and then he's using that money to create something else new.
And he enjoyed building the bomb. Like at the time, we don't hold the bomb building against him because he had...
Well, we could a little bit, but sure, go for it. Yeah.
Well, he repents of it. Yeah. And we don't... No, you're right. We can hold it against him, but we don't think he's a hypocrite because it's in the first scene, it's him like showing off how cool the missile is. Yeah. And this is clearly like a real Randian guy who is a hawkish American who believes in the product. He's not lying to himself. Yeah. He's just wrong.
And his whole story, like he's always talking about his dad. Like this is how dad did it.
Yeah.
It keeps coming up. So for him, it really is like a real, like in the real world, he's taking what he learned. He's enacting it, and it's just people siphoning off this value, like trying to make the real thing abstract. And that actually becomes the thing that is most wicked, because then they actually have to try to kill Tony Stark and keep selling the weapons.
So another weird thing, like at the end of the movie,
Steve Jobs was murdered. I'm saying it now. It was too much trouble.
But they think about the climax of the movie,
the literal climax.
Yeah, not the fake climax, which happens later, but the one where they're Ironmonger's chasing Iron Man. They're both going up to the sky. Now, this is just. I'm
just trying to imagine what you would have been like watching. All these other people have seen Iron Man 50 times. You're like, hold on a minute, because I think I can see where you're going.
Well, because what's happening is you have the
fake pursuing
board of director guy pursuing owner guy to kill him. Like, so here it is. Here's the moment. They're going up. Now, owner guy has made a real thing, a real suit, and he has encountered a real problem, which is that it ices
Yes.
if you get up too high. And so he's fixed
I
the
don't
real
wanna get
problem using his creativity.
Yeah.
But Ironmonger guy has Obadiah Stane. Let's give him his real name, which is just a crazy villain name. It's like the Amish. That's who we need to be worried about. Obadiah.
This is the least Jewish name we could come up with for the stock market board of director guy.
Right. Although Stane does sound like Stein.
Oh, does it? Oh, no, excuse me.
I think
If it was
actually,
Stein in the script, it would have definitely
no,
been
I do think they're. Well, anyways, I think the writers.
Obadiah is very...
Oh,
go on. This is a good point. You're making a good point.
All right, so they're going up. They're going up. He's chasing him. And
He gets us back on this.
But he knows. Sorry, I apologize. But he knows about the icing because he built it and he did it and he failed.
and when he failed, it was because he made his suit and then it wasn't really ready. But he's like, screw it, I'm flying. His whole motivation at that point when he figured out that there was ice was, I want to go as high as I can with this thing I made, and isn't this amazing? Which actually now it's a very disappointing scene because so much of it is just like he's got this mask and it like you think it's doing cool. When I watched it first, it's like, oh, he's got like virtual reality and he can like highlight items in the real world, and then but then it's just like he's looking them up on Wikipedia. There's a scene where it's like he looks at the cityscape and there's a Ferris wheel and it like goes and it's like Ferris wheel and it's like tells you about a Ferris. Anyways, the point is he brings the villain who is the representation of abstract value in its parasitic relationship to the real, and he brings him up towards God, towards heaven. And what happens is abstract value boy encounters nature, ice, the problem of ice. And that's what what did you do about the ice? The point is the stock market doesn't have anything to do with the ice because the stock market is only interested in things insofar as they create value. It didn't think about it. It's a motor for the movement of real value, real goods, real people into abstract values for the sake of an eventual tyranny whereby you translate abstract back into the real. Anyways, it was beautiful. Nature's revenge is a trope, right? Like the guy who relies on machines finds that at the end of the day he forgot that, in this case, ice. But I think this trope is highlighted here that the real has its revenge. Unfortunately, in real life, it doesn't, except for on poor people.
The poor suffer what they must. But I think at some point. They
get to watch Iron Man, though.
At some point, it does. I mean, it doesn't seem like it's about to collapse in America. It seems like it'll. Yeah. On the ground, it seems much more like it'll keep going forever. But people tend to, at some point, have a revolution. Throughout history, over and over again, there aren't a lot of perpetual empires. Or there's decline, or there's invasion. Mm-hmm. I mean, maybe America will reign for 1,000 years, but it seems
we have more
historically
of a pivot point than most. But no, you're right. So after the movie, Mark turned to me and goes, "You want to be Iron Man, don't you?" I said, "Yeah, of course I want to be Iron Man." Why does everybody want to be Iron Man?
Well, because he's so cool.
All right, good. I mean, that was worth everybody's time.
No, I was thinking about like Jordan Peterson is always, and the Jungian thing is always about like order and chaos, and to some extent, like Iron Man is the greater dimension of that as a hero. Like he is in his personal life, he's very chaotic. He's getting up late. He's having sex with models, and he's in a state of disorder. But as a result of this, that he is, which is like that fun James Dean bohemian notion, that he is able to pivot that into greater mastery, greater order of the world. His frame of reference for what reality is wider. And so there is then this like fantasy for the young man who's going to Iron Man, who's had like a couple of drinkies beforehand, is going to, whose life is not together. Wait a minute, this is making me a better, more special, more interesting person that will eventually give me greater power. As I wedge a zin into my top lip, which I really have been enjoying the zins.
Yeah, no, it's a big problem with superhero movies is you're supposed to buy that someone can become self-sacrificial without sacrificing on lower levels. Like, I mean, sacrifice is a process that goes all the way up to the top, but we have no concept of, like, chastity, for instance, being precisely the way that you are able to give your life at the end. So we have these heroes who aren't good people because what we fantasize about is that we won't have to take care of our lives, but we can still, through some, upcoming gesture, some radical move, be heroic. It's a very tantalizing lie, I think. I'm not saying this is why you want to be Iron Man.
Thank you.
You believe
no, I mean I think it's.
But it's very tantalizing. It's very tantalizing.
But, I mean, this
the idea that you can have it all.
The Stranger, where before he unloads into the Arab on the beach in Gamut, he goes, maybe it's after, I don't know, but he goes, I just wake up and I think, wouldn't it be nice to be able to have a big heroic gesture today and do something good for somebody? Like he's waiting for the opportunity to do the great thing, to be a good man, but is incapable of ordering his life without guidance to like do all the small steps where that would become routine to be good and to be good for people.
Yeah, if you can't not sleep with the reporter in the first scene, you really can't.
You might not risk death to save the world
for It just doesn't work like that. I mean, that is the fantasy, though. It's like we can have our private sort of sealed off immorality, and that won't affect our higher morality.
But that they're both expressions of his authenticity, that he has an authenticity to have sex with the reporter, and there's an authenticity to be heroic. I mean, people do feel both of those things simultaneously, but it doesn't at all depict vice and what it does to a person over time, which is why I think the final scene where he says, I am Iron Man, it's the great transgression against what a superhero is supposed to do. All the way through, everything Tony Stark does is it's his best self at that moment, and there is no growing concupiscence that poisons him.
Yeah.
If you always are an individual, if you continue to listen to the self, you will make the heroic choice, and you'll get all the sex, and you'll be very, very smart. And we want, because that's, I mean, America.
No, that's
great
it.
Country,
that's the American dream. That's the American dream. Right?
That's the virtue. That's the virtue that fell away. It's a very sexually liberalized country. I don't know if I'm seeing things in the show business world that other people are not being exposed to all the time, but I'm shocked at the extent to which. But hold on, no. But then. That then weirdly cuts against this medicinal culture. It's like you've got to be yourself and have your feelings and really be authentic. And then everything is medicated. You've got to have a marijuana gummy to go to sleep, or to have an erection, or to do your laundry or whatever.
Okay. Not the same gummy, but
different gummies.
Different, but the same company, and they go, whatever mood you need to be in. I forget how the commercial was. I was so disgusted by this where it's like the couple. He's had the going to sleep gummy, and she's had the arousal gummy, and which is actually the problem. Like you should be like your feelings are there for a reason. You shouldn't be trying to medicate yourself into the 7 o'clock mood and the 9 o'clock mood. This is like, that's a big part of the country. Excuse me, might have to put that out.
Oh, just use the bleep.
Yeah. Alex will bleep you out.
Say it again. I'll bleep you. No.
I'm just. It's everything. It's like.
Well,
so many drugs.
So when C.S. Lewis was answering the question why he thought that the desire for money was the root of all evil, he thought that it was the attempt to control time and to have a repetition of experiences so that they could be exactly the same. So in a certain sense, you are in absolute control of your life, and having experienced one thing, you can recreate that again and again and again.
Yes.
And we've done that to the form of we bought gummies that will
do that for you.
I think the other thing happening, James, there's so much happening. But one of the things is the adventure of being an American is trying to attain to an impossible ideal of the individual. And the individual is supposed to have everything within himself. It's all supposed to come from within. You give yourself the law, you obey it. To thine own self be true is sort of the maxim. And the trouble with experience is that it only ever comes with others, like from the outside. Arousal is like the most obvious version of this, where it's like when Augustine laments the arrival of arousal, he does it precisely as, well, it's something that you can't control, whether, like when you want it, you don't necessarily get it, and when you don't want it, it might be there. And he's a little bit down on this, but I think there's something very beautiful about it, that like it only comes as a response. Like we're intentional beings. Like we are always connected to an object. When we're thinking of something. When we're perceiving something. When we're feeling something. the human person is a relation, never just closed off within himself. Drugs are obviously just a relation to certain things, but it kind of allows us to live this illusion that our arousal, our sleep, our lack of anxiety,
just pain, just to take away actual pain that your body is feeling.
Yeah, but it comes from a sort of sovereign center. Now it's an irony, right? Because the sovereign self is only ever achieved by massive dependence on large corporations, as we found.
Well, I mean, when you were saying before the C.S. Lewis and it's being able to replicate the same thing in time, the reason that money is necessary for that is because you need teams of people to have various levels of sacrifice in exchange for money to replicate that for you.
Oh, yeah. No,
so, like, the greatest individual in America is the slave-holding Southerner in the perfect mansion, like the only way that could be maintained.
Yeah,
right.
Iron Man.
Well, they don't.
Power. Well, which is another fantasy of Iron Man, right? Is because
we're back.
Is because
I can't get away from it.
How would you actually make the Iron Man suit?
Right.
You'd have to have huge numbers of people working for you around the clock at your whim. It's never that. It's Tony with a screwdriver and a claw that he built himself, just tinkering away. It's the sweat of his own brow. At no point is outside labour being brought in to build the thing he wants.
That's the idea of all technology, though, is that we create batteries so that we don't have to get the human power directly.
It's fun to get a robot slave.
No, it's in between, because some sort of real slave built the robot.
Yeah.
And built the battery. But we have the battery or the robot, so that we didn't have to look at the human.
So we can liberate.
It's a way of extending time so that the slaves are always some people who just left the room, and you walk in, and it's like, thank you. I will now.
Even if leaving the room is the accelerationist fantasy that we'll get to a point where we don't actually need to have people working a band. We'll have luxury space communism by having exploitative capitalism for long enough until we get
That's
to
the dream, baby.
Point.
It's like we're gonna have the hero thing by having the sex thing. I mean, I just think it's not a complicated.
Have you done sex robots on the show yet?
No.
It's probably for the best.
Yeah.
But no, I think this is also like one of these problems when people are like investing in emerging markets and stuff like that, and they're saying like, "Look, America's so wealthy. You know what we need to do? We need to go to Indonesia and create the same type of economy in Indonesia as America because they're in sweatshops in Indonesia, but they're not in America. So we got to do the same thing over there, and then they won't have sweatshops." It's like, well, no, then we won't have the shirts.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the problem is that, whereas it would be great to get those people out of the sweatshops. The way that we do is by changing not their economy but ours.
Yeah, it's great.
The other great difficulty is that you.
But it's all. But also, it's that battery.
I mean,
problem,
it was
right?
China first, right? That you'll use up. China will become a better economy by having had our sweatshops there, and then immediately as China takes that model and grows, they go and get sweatshops in Africa. Like there's actually no end to needing someone who is in a sweatshop somewhere.
That's right.
It's just like at some point, the American economy keeps going the way it is. You'll welcome you'd welcome a factory of some kind, I think, in the Rust Belt, just some sort of thing that can give people jobs. And when it falls down, I mean, what?
I can't get enough bicycles. Do you know what I mean? Here, actually.
You can't get bicycles?
No, it's true.
I was offered a bicycle on coming here that I have not found. Do you have a bicycle?
You can use mine.
You have I don't want to actually ride through the snow.
Yeah, I was going to say.
It was a posture.
I just posturing. Yeah, that's great. Great. Guys, I got to go to something, to a meeting. Sorry.
Well, I hope that was.
I didn't know we'd be talking about Iron Man for 40 minutes. No, I had a great time.
No one does.
Thank you.
James, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, everyone, do the thing. Subscribe. Tell your friends. Goodbye.